Okay, so on this one, I'm gonna use graphite, but I'm gonna demonstrate how to do hatching. Okay, and so I'll show you a little bit on this scrap piece of paper here. So hatching is basically just parallel lines. Okay, so like this, you just put a bunch of lines. They all go the same direction. They don't necessarily have to be perfect, but the idea is that they all, they're all little straight lines. Okay, and so, how to use this? Well, if you want it to look darker, and especially if you're working with graphite, you can push down harder. Okay, so if I push down harder versus not as, a lighter touch there, they're gonna look lighter there and then darker there. Another thing is that if you put them really close together, so, let's say I do the same pressure all the way around, but I put my lines really close together. Again, they end up looking darker. But if I space them apart more, I just don't quite put as many there, then they look lighter, okay? And same thing, if I'm, say I'm filling in an area and I really, even if it's the same density, but I just put a bunch of them there and I keep putting more and more, it's gonna look darker. And then, again, same thing. If I just don't use quite as many, it's gonna look lighter, okay? And then the last thing too is that it's a little harder to do sometimes with graphite, but if you get thicker lines, and so, almost like if you even redraw over it, a thicker line versus a thin line. Thicker lines will look darker and then thin lines will look lighter. Okay, and so you can do kind of any variation of these as you're drawing this. You can do them all, you can use that, and then you can use them all together, or you can kind of focus more on just one or the other, pressure or density, whatever works for you. Okay, so I have an HB. I'm just going to start with the HB, and I've still got a little bit of charcoal smudged here, but that's okay. Again, I'm just gonna kind of keep going here. And so if you notice, I'm almost holding my pencil a little more like a paintbrush. And that's what I did when I was drawing with the charcoal. Okay, and so I've got my circle in there. And like I said before, if you need to use a compass, or if you need to use, even if you find like a cup or a glass, something that's got the shape you need, and you need to draw your circle that way, go ahead. Just make sure you don't push down too hard when you do the outline. Okay. So in the end, I'm going to do 6 of these, and each one's going to be with a different technique. And so the trick too is to get, even though the way you render them is going to be a different style, I'm trying to get this to match that one. So however dark this is over here and however dark this is here, I want it to match on this one. And then you can't quite see it on the camera, but the light area, I want the light area to be just as light over here too. Okay, so the idea is that whatever technique you use, whatever medium, you're still getting the correct, the values are still good, still correct. Okay, so again, since I'm doing hatching, the idea is that I'm using straight lines. And so, one way to think of it, and I'll probably come back in and do another layer, but I'm just gonna kind of start with this cast shadow, okay? And then the last time when I did the charcoal one, I kind of broke each section down a little bit differently. But on this one, since I'm just using these straight lines, I'm going to kind of go with like a mass dark. So there's where the mass of the shadow would be. Highlight's going to be in there somewhere right there. And so then I'm going to kind of block in the mass light. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just not pushing down as hard. I'm just putting a few lines. Whenever I start drawing with texture, any kind of lines, hatched marks, cross hatching, whatever, I used to draw a little more loose at the beginning. I'm not as precise with my marks. And then as I keep going, I start getting a little more precise. Okay, so I'm there. And so now I want to kind of push this a little darker, and also the core shadow. So again, see, now I'm going to push down a little more. I'm going to probably try to put them closer together as I keep going. And again, I'm doing it a little more messy, and I'm not being as precise, but that's okay. And then here we go. So the core shadow. So again, mostly what I'm doing is just trying to go darker and heavier. Okay, and so then that is, again, my HB. So I'm gonna switch to a darker graphite now. Because that one's, you know, I could try and get darker with that one, but it's probably easier if I just switch to something like this, that's a softer graphite. And then build things up from there. Okay, so I'm there. I'll, you know, put a little more dark over here in this reflected light. I'm definitely gonna get a lot darker here. And again, I can kind of smooth this out. And the trick is I'm just trying not to crisscross them, just because I'm focusing on this being hatch lines and not cross hatching. So it's not usually how I draw, so it actually kind of feels a little awkward, but that's okay. Okay, so I'm there. So now I'm going to start pushing some of these other tones a little bit darker. Again, even though there's light here, I don't want it to be too light. I'm trying to match what I have on this other one. So it's a softer graphite pencil, so I'm kind of just adding more lines, and then since it's softer, I don't really have to push down that hard. Okay, and I don't want this to just be completely wide. I kind of want it to kind of fade in, so and I'm gonna kind of layer my marks and just kind of go over it a bit like that. Okay, and again, I don't want this too hard of an edge. I almost want it to look a little fuzzy, so as I keep going, and again, I'm not gonna draw this one completely to where it's finished. Then I'll end up with some really long videos, and this is just something to get you guys going for your assignment. But I do wanna kind of get this to soften out a bit. And so I'm just kind of playing with the density and the pressure as I'm putting the marks. Get that core shadow to go a little darker. You know, this form, it's not exactly the best circle I've ever drawn, but again, I'm not gonna mess with it too much. So there we go. I'm gonna get this cast shadow to go darker, because the cast shadow should be darker than what's up there. And then again, there's a little occlusion that I'm almost just kind of filling in a bit here, a bit, to give it a little bit of a sharp edge here. And again, really, I'm just trying to get you guys to try out some different techniques. And so, you know, you can use your eraser as you go. Try not to overuse your eraser. And again, maybe one more little pass here. I'm going to clean out my lines just one more time. As you can see with the eraser, you can actually kind of use it to help you shape the form. And again, something like that, and it is always harder to get quite to black with graphite, so you can just try to get as close as you can. I'll just push down harder. Kind of smooth that out. Remember, graphite's really reflective, so sometimes the light kind of bounces up. But I think that's, you know, I think that's going to be good enough for here.